We're going to make a stovetop focaccia using the comfy garlic that we comfied earlier and the rosemary that we found growing out of the wall. What did you just do?
I just wild foraged some rosemary.
Now in my bowl, which I have covered because the wind has just started to pick up, we have 400 grams approximately of sifted all-purpose flour. Now the reason I'm putting gloves on is because I absolutely hate making bread without, I hate the way that it feels on my hands, so I'm just going to use some gloves. So that's just me. So there we have it. So 400 grams of sifted flour. Now the reason I've sifted this is just to make the flour a little bit lighter. I'm hoping, because obviously we're baking this basically on the stovetop, we're hoping that with the sift it's just going to help aerate the flour a little bit more. To this I'm going to add a tablespoon of sugar. So I say roughly anyway, so a tablespoon of sugar goes in, followed by a whole tablespoon of yeast. And again, I need to try and do as much as I can to get this flour to aerate and rise and go really puffy. So there's my yeast. So there's quite a lot of yeast going in there. And I'm just going to stir this through. And now I'm going to add a teaspoon of my Maldon sea salt, which I will top with this salt later as well once it goes into the stove, once it goes into my frying pan. And I stir this again just to incorporate those ingredients together. And just before I get my hands in there, we're going to start adding some water. Now roughly you're going to add a cup full of water, and I do say roughly in the sense that we've got to sort of like just work the flour until we get a nice dough. So we'll add a little bit of water at a time, just bringing this together. And really this is just to prove that you can make bread without an oven when you're in your camper van or tent. You can just see now that I'm going to get shaggy dough. I'm just going to add a little bit more water again before I get my hands in. Just going to try and start bringing that dough together now, incorporating that water. Just before I carry on, I'm just going to get Joe to pour some of the garlic oil that we made earlier onto my hands. Can you look at my hands now? Okay. I'm just going to knead this bread for about 5 minutes. Just to really bring it all together. I'm just going to fold the dough under itself, and I check that it's ready just by giving it a little press, and it springs straight back. I'm just going to oil my bowl now. And I'm just going to make sure that I cover all of the surfaces. Last thing I want to do, a little tiny bit of oil over the top of my dough. Now we just need to cover it with cling film for around about 2 hours just to let it prove. I have the perfect place. I'm just going to pop that there just so it's not in direct sunlight. I'm just going to cover it with my tea towel. And that can sit there for 2 hours, and then we can have a go at cooking it on top of the stove. And welcome back. Look how soft that dough is now. So pliable, it's lovely. Using my fingers, I'm just going to break some of this garlic up. I'm going to keep a few pieces for the top. I'm just going to fold this just very quickly through that bread. I don't want to work it too much now. And then in goes my stovetop focaccia. I'm roughly just going to shape this. Now I'm going to just dimple it a little bit and put some garlic cloves into the top. Break up some of this rosemary that we found growing in a wall at the garlic farm. But it was perfect actually, because we forgot to pick some from our own garden, so I can use some of their homegrown rosemary. That should be plenty actually. And very roughly, I'm just going to run my knife through that, and then I'm just going to should be plenty actually. And just before I get my hands dirty, I'm also just going to give it a little sprinkle of sea salt just over the top. You can see how soft that dough is, it's amazing. Lid goes on, back in the sun for another half an hour before we can start cooking. Now we've got to cook this really slowly. We want to make sure that the bottom's really crispy, and once that happens we'll flip it over, finish it off, and we should have a fantastic garlic confit and rosemary focaccia. I've set the heat at medium-low. I'm just going to let this cook away now until I get that really crispy bottom.
Have a little bit of bread on.